welcome to we're gonna call this Color Break One Shot. You know me, I love my comic book puns. I'm your host for this episode. We're gonna be talking about Ultimate Spider-Man Omnibus Volume Number 1. So if it's outside of the, what is it, like issue number 39, we're not talking about it. Joining me, we've got Vactor, host of the Vactorverse podcast. You can find that link down below. Vactor, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing well. Superhero coming through.
We had to have Vactor on. I know he's a big Ultimate Spider-Man fan. When Christian and I were on Vactor's podcast, we had this idea going, right? We're all big fans of Ultimate Spider-Man. And we've got friend of the show, Long Box Entertainment. How's it going, dude?
What's up, fellas? How are y'all doing? Y'all looking good. Y'all looking happy. This is what I like, man.
That's always a good compliment.
Oh, man.
All right, and you just heard.
Yeah, I'm just ready to talk about Spidey.
Yeah, dude. All right. We've also got, if you're looking at a mustached guy on your screen, you're like, who's that guy? That's Christian.
That is me. How's it going, man?
Dude, it's going all right. All right. You know what? I'm just going to jump right into it. So we're talking Ultimate Spider-Man, volume number 1, issues number 1 to 39. We're going to talk spoilers. So if you haven't read it, if you're looking to read Ultimate Spider-Man, get it on Marvel Unlimited, get the Omni, but get out of here, all right? Because we're talking spoilers.
Yes.
So, so I'm assuming that Vactor and Longbox both have interesting stories. I kind of just want to know, like, you know, when you first started reading Ultimate Spider-Man, maybe like how old were you? What was like the setting going on? And I'm just going to go real first. I'm going to go real quick first. I had COVID when I was reading Ultimate Spider-Man. So this thing actually helped me a whole lot. Binged it all in like one weekend. It was awesome.
Dang.
So Vactor, let's hear it, dude. What's your story, your background with Ultimate Spider-Man specifically?
Ultimate Spider-Man was the comic that got me back into comics. So I had stopped because girls happened, high school happened, and I was like, all right, that's for kids. I'm gonna leave the comics alone. But when Ultimate Spider-Man came out, this was also around the time of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie coming out. It kind of reignited my comic like fire. So I was like, all right, let me check this out because it's a brand new Spider-Man. Spider-Man had always been my favorite character. So I said, let me check this out. And it immediately hooked me. I was like, what? This is, I have to read more. I have to read every comic that's ever been written after reading Ultimate Spider-Man. And it got me going back into a comic shop. It was like the spark for everything in my comic life. So I will always be grateful to Ultimate Spider-Man for kind of reigniting that passion in me for comic books.
That's awesome. So I gotta ask, Vactor, did you start like issue number 1? You knew it was gonna be on the stand, and you're like on it on issue number 1, or did it take like a couple of issues before you jumped on?
Well, it was actually going already, and I wish I remembered which issue it was. Like, I don't know, issue 25 was out at the time. Whatever it was, I went back and read it from the beginning up to that point. And like I said, the Spider-Man movie was kind of all like breaking box office records and doing all kind of stuff. So I didn't know about it at first when it was coming out. But when I found out about it, I was like, why did I not know about this? If I had known that they restarted Spider-Man, they did his origin in 2000 rather than in 1962, I would have been all over that from the beginning. So when I found out about it, I was like, let's go. This is what I need to be reading every week, every month, every day for the rest of my life.
Nice, dude. That's awesome. All right, so Longbox, kind of similar question. Because I know you're young like me and Christian, right? So I don't know how old were you when it came out. Was the Omni like the first time you were reading through it, or?
So actually, it's a very interesting story. So at my high school library, they always had like different graphic novels, right? And I remember like the first 2 graphic novels I ever checked out. It was Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, and it was Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember going like crazy over Ultimate Spider-Man. I was like, I need this. Like, I didn't even know at the time that like trade paperbacks existed.
Mm.
I only thought like single issues was that was the way, right? So I remember I told my mom, and she had bought me like copies of like volumes 1 and 2 of the trade paperbacks, and I read them to shreds.
Mm.
Literally, they were falling off. But
Yeah.
my first time fully reading the full story like in chronological order was on Marvel Unlimited.
Mm.
And then once the omnibus got reprinted, I reread it again because I really love this story. And it's just honestly, it's the perfect Spider-Man story for me. You know, the fact that what Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Bagley was able to take what Stan Lee and Steve Ditko did and just make it modern. And that's really all they did. They just made it modern.
Yeah,
And it was perfect.
it's pretty genius. Yeah, when you put it like that. All right, Christian.
Yeah.
Kind of. I know you and me. We both just read it, but maybe you
Yeah.
could say maybe I don't know if your story is as interesting. I'm not sure, but
Well, I had to defend the honor of my friend Vactor over here, because you said, Longbox, you're young like me and Christian.
Well,
There's a young man right here.
So listen, Christian. All I'll say on that is I think when the time that Vactor's speaking about when Spider-Man 1's in theaters, I think I'm
You were
3 or
for it,
4.
Cody. You were for it. Yeah.
Yeah, facts.
I was probably your guys' age right now. What you are right now, that's what I was when I was reading it for the first
I
time.
got you. Yeah, no knock to Vactor. You know Vactor. I love you, buddy. No knock to Vactor.
We love him. He's a friend of the show.
Oh yeah. So Christian, dude,
Um,
yeah, what was
Cody
kind of
has
like
this
going
thing.
on when you're reading?
Cody has this thing he loves to do, where he will like wait for me to run out of money, and then
Oh,
he'll
yeah.
be like, "Hey, this brand new thing came out. You should buy it." And
Yeah.
pull it up, show it, Cody.
What do you mean? Just like the Omni? Just show it? Yeah.
Because he made me get the
Oh.
exact same one.
Y'all have the same cover. I got this cover.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
Yep.
It was just a matter of like, you have to buy it now, and I was like, maybe I'll buy it. And he was like, it's going out of print. It hasn't. It's still there.
Maybe.
But like, he was like,
maybe they shadow dropped another printing, Christian. You never know. You know.
it was just like, now you have it. And it was just sitting there, honestly. And then I don't know what it was. I was just one day I made a video about wanting to buy more Omnis because I really want to. But I said to myself, I cannot buy a new Omni until I read all the Omnis I have, which is just 2. I have talked about the fact that for like 6 months I timed how long it would take me to read a single issue. Chopped it down to like, I think it was 7.5 minutes. And I did the math, and I was like, I could finish Ultimate Spider-Man in 4 hours, or like 5 hours, if I really put my mind to it. And yeah, that's what I did. I just sat down, and couldn't put it down. Honestly, I mean, thank you, Cody. I know I I give you a lot of shit for making me spend money, but it was.
You know what's crazy? When I was rereading this, doing research for it, because I haven't read these issues, I want to say it's got to be like 15 years. But when I was rereading them, I was like binging it. Like I was like, I got the next one. It flows so well.
Oh, it's perfect.
crazy. Yeah, to think
Honestly.
about, like these were coming out monthly, and you had to wait for a month for the next one. But it flows so good. Like
That's how I feel right now. Not to like talk about other comics, but that's how I feel about the current Batman run.
oh yeah, right.
Mr. Yarsky. I mean, I did this. What was it? I went to comic book shop on Saturday. I got issue, I think 132. Got in the car and I didn't even leave the parking lot. I was like, I just gotta read this right now. I could have read it at the store, been way cheaper.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with Ultimate Spider-Man. It was just one of those things that I picked it up and.
It's impossible to put it down. I remember like when I first got my omnibus of it, I cracked it open the day I unboxed it.
Yes.
Like it's soon because I'm like, it's such like nostalgia. Like, man, this is like one of the first like comics I ever read. So it's like I need to read it. And the fact it moves so seamlessly. And I couldn't imagine like being around and reading comics when it was coming out in singles. Like the fact that I have to wait like 4 and 5 issues just for him to put on the costume.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
Man,
yeah.
it was one of those things that I will say when I got it, and I'm gonna break the illusion for a lot of people. I opened it immediately. Like I got it and just cut it open. I think I was gonna film color break. I just Cody, look, I got it. And then like 2 hours afterwards, I filmed the unboxing. So whoever thought I opened it on the spot for you, no, Cody was the first person to see it. I just resealed that box.
So you guys are touching on like I think the perfect place to start, right? And I think the fact that like it flows so well is all a testament to the like this whole thing, right? Unless I'm mistaken, right? And I don't think I am. This is all Bendis and Bagley, right? Like, isn't that just
Yes.
insane how the
Yes.
entire
Yes.
run is like a singular team, a singular vision? There isn't a fill-in artist, right? That throws it all off, makes it wonky. It's like it's just these dudes, and it's like on the page. You know what I mean? For how long was the run in total? I don't even know.
160 issues.
160. Yeah.
And they
And I
set
don't
the
think-
record for the single longest creative team together. They set the record on this book.
It ruined my idea of what an Omni is because I read it's the first Omni I read, and then the day after I read Flash by Jeff Johns. And like I think around like issue 6, they changed one of the artists. I forget who
Yeah.
it was, and I was like, this is not as good now. What
Yeah,
happened?
it will spoil you like having these two guys together for this entire run. Like they're not the entire run, I should say. After they set the record, Bagley leaves and other artists come in. But it like when I was reading it, it just felt like a warm blanket. Every time I was like another issue comes out, it's like, oh, Bendis and Bagley, Bendis and Bagley, and Bagley had been the artist that I like associated with Spider-Man from his time on Amazing Spider-Man. If you guys haven't read when Bagley was on Amazing Spider-Man, this was around
Yes.
like the Clone Saga and a whole bunch of stuff. But when he was on there, it was like this is what Spider-Man is supposed to look like. And so when he was on Ultimate, I was like, it defines not only this Ultimate run, but also like Ultimate Comics in general at that time. Because Ultimate Spider-Man was the first in the Ultimate line. And then they had Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Fantastic Four, Ultimates. But Spider-Man is the one that like kicked off the universe. That's like the whole thing that set it off. And the success of this book is the reason why they're able to continue going for 10 years. But
Right.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
crazy.
That's it's wild to think about. Just them doing like a singular vision on Spider-Man. I think it's
I felt represented.
Mhm.
Like I skinny Peter Parker man has no muscles. I
Yes.
was like,
This Peter Parker is very relatable, and as someone like, because I've said this story before that my first ever omnibus was the Amazing Spider-Man omnibus,
nice.
Volume 1.
Nice.
You know, that's the Stan Lee stuff.
Mhm.
And honestly, Ultimate Peter Parker was a lot more likable,
Yes.
especially in these earlier issues versus 616 Peter. And that's a testament because I feel like Ultimate means so much, and it's like so iconic that this is literally the version of Spider-Man that I feel like comic book fans first think of when they think of early Peter Parker in high school.
so.
Yeah.
I was just about to ask that, right? Because I know there's some online discourse around this whole thing, right? And I know it's recency bias. I know it because I literally just finished this like less than a month ago. But I'm gonna say I think this is like the best Spider-Man's ever looked, right? Like maybe not the Peter Parker stuff or whatever, but like in my mind now, like this, I know for a fact this is what I'm gonna be thinking of when I think of like Spider-Man, comic book Spider-Man in a suit. It's got to be Bagley's art, dude.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And what was also crazy around this time, all the marketing material was Bagley's art. Like if you went into Walmart, Target, whatever, all the notebooks are Bagley art. All the backpacks are Bagley art. So you were seeing like the art that's on the cover. I kind of wish you guys had or I wish they had done the omnibus with that very first cover that they did. It's a red cover and he's swinging through Times Square. It looks kind of like
This
kind of a yes,
I was
that
gonna
one.
say,
Yes,
that's like
yes.
the first
Yeah.
printing, right?
Yes,
I was about
that
to-
was Yes, that's the image in my mind when I think about Ultimate Spider-Man. That's the first one that comes to my mind. But yeah, it's like everything that you guys are saying is 100% correct. And it's also interesting. It's interesting for me to hear your guys' take on it now, with it being 20 years old. And when I was reading it, dang, it's been 20 years now that I think about it. But when I was reading it, it was like, oh, this is what's happening now. Like, if you look at Peter Parker's haircut, that was like the 2000 popular haircut. If
And
you
it's
read a lot
coming
of the,
back.
oh,
It's coming
dang,
back.
if you
Very
read a,
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah,
yes,
the
yes.
middle part is coming back. I'm telling you.
Oh man, if you read like a lot of the slang that Bendis uses, it's kind of interesting because there's a lot of like 2000 stuff that's in there, but it's some of that stuff has not aged as well. Like for me reading it, I was like, I think back to 2000 when I was reading it, I was like, oh, this is now. This is like how kids are talking now. And I wonder now that we've had 20 years, it's like, what would it be like today if it started today? He'd be on TikTok. He'd be doing
I feel like
YouTube
people would
channels.
hate it. People would hate it, and then in 20 years they'd be like, "Oh my God,
Yeah,
remember
like the
Maximum
Star Wars
Spider-Man from
prequels.
2023?"
Yeah,
Like,
right.
I mean, Vector, you're making a lot of
That
good
would have
points
been
too with the slang and stuff like that. To me, that didn't throw me off necessarily. It kind of put me. It's like an alternate universe, anyways, right? So like I'm already
Yeah,
kind of
right.
thinking that way. But I
Yeah.
love the fact that you mentioned the slang, but also just like all like the tech and stuff, right? Like computer.
Yes,
Like Peter's like
yes.
lab.
Yeah,
That's in the
right.
basement. He's got like the big blocky computer, and he's
Yes.
putting in
Yeah.
CDs with data on it or whatever.
Yeah.
for
What's
me, it
I don't know.
was
Go
it
ahead.
was it was great for me because I mean, they did teach English in schools in Ecuador, but a lot of it was just watching movies, and you would see
Mm,
the dialogue in movies. And growing up in the early 2000s, it's sort of like the English that I grew up listening to.
mm.
Because I wouldn't just listen to it on the streets. So when I read this, it felt normal to me. I was like, great.
And
This
I
is
was
my Spider-Man.
rereading it. I was rereading it on the Marvel Unlimited, so it had all the previously on pages of like what
Mm.
happened in the time before. In your guys's Omnibus, it doesn't have those previously on pages, right? It just flows
no.
as all one.
Mhm.
What's funny is on those previously ons, the border of it is like an old Apple interface. It's like the Mac OS 5 or whatever. I don't know what it is, but it's like that really dates it to see like, dang, that was like probably cutting edge at the time. I didn't even think about that, but that's another thing that kind of dates it.
Oh wow. I One thing I really like the fact that like we're talking like how the technology really started booming during that time, and the fact that Peter Parker is the like web designer for
Yes,
the
yes,
Daily
yes,
Bugle. I love that.
Yep.
It's
yes,
a nice
yes.
update instead of him like just
Hmm.
taking photos,
Right.
he's
Yep.
actually helping out with the web design.
Yeah.
It's just, I laughed like an idiot when I read web design. I was like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which at the
Right.
time that was like TikTok. It was like web design. Whoa, this is like the cutting edge. This is like the new stuff that's going on right now.
Right.
And Longbox, having read the amazing stuff, the Stan Lee stuff, I'm sure you saw in there like there was slang from the '60s, and like Peter Parker's
Yes.
box cut was like from the '60s. So it also, here's another thing that I was thinking about as I was reading this. What is really great about what Bendis did, and he got kind of some flack for this later, being very wordy, like a lot of text, a lot of word balloons on the
Mhm.
page, and then also they called it like his decompressed style, where the original Amazing Spider-Man, the origin is like in that first issue. This one,
Mhm.
it's like the origin is like the first 6 issues. So it's like
Like the first
he's
Right.
book, pretty
he's
much. Yeah.
taken his time and just
Mhm.
uncompress, you know, uncompacting that. So I thought that was fantastic, and it's like that's probably what it would be like if it was done today's. We have different storytelling techniques than we did in the '60s, and
Right.
I love Stan Lee for what he created, but I don't love Stan Lee for his writing. Like anytime I read any of Stan Lee's writing,
Mhm.
it's just like this is dated. It's hard to get into. It's kind of like when you're watching like movies from the 40s and 50s. It's like they talk different, they edit it different, and it's just styles have changed. But the things that last from the 60s till now, it's like that core of who Peter Parker is, who Spider-Man is. And Bendis just does a perfect job. Like when I was reading this, I was like, all these memories were flooding back to me of, man, I remember why I love this so much. Because for years I've just been, like when you guys came on the podcast, I'm like, oh yeah, Ultimate Spider-Man, I love that book. Yeah. But I haven't read it in like 15 years. So going back now, it's like, oh yeah, I remember this. And now that's why I love it. And another thing that I loved about it was the way that Bendis tied everything in together. Like Norman Osborn is tied into the spider that bit him. Like the
Yes.
Doc Ock works at Oscorp. So everything ends up being tied in together. Whereas when Stan Lee was doing it, it was like, oh, okay, let me come up with, all right, the Lizard, that's the villain for this week. All right, Sandman, that's the new one. So Bendis had that, like, the hindsight to look back and say, oh, Sandman's going to be a popular character, so I'm going to put him in
Right, he's able
instead
to weave
of
it into kind of the
Yes.
story as
Right.
it's going, like the lore of this.
Yeah,
world. Yep.
two things that I really like, and this is we were talking about how he stretched out the origin for like 6 issues. I liked it personally because I was discovering his
Yes.
powers with him.
yes,
Yep.
yes,
It wasn't
Mhm.
like, oh, I know Spider-Man. I know what he does. I know how he gets his powers. But it was sort of refreshing to see it with him. See him be like, oh, what's this?
Right.
That was interesting. I liked it. And the other thing is, I liked how a lot of superhero shows, movies, comics will be like, oh, the superhero was just created. Guess what? Other 6 villains were just created this
Yeah.
week. They just came out.
Yeah.
I like how like they'll talk like, oh no, like 2 months ago, this guy got in an accident. They show you the backstory, so it's like, oh, okay. It doesn't feel like it's just like, oh, superhero. Let me put my suit on. No,
Right.
like they had been simmering for a while, and I
Right.
like that a lot.
Right. All the
That's one thing
details.
I like about the Kingpin in this, like the fact that where we meet the enforcers and the big man, and the Kingpin just when he puts the mask over him and just like I can't remember he like strangles him or like crushes his head or
Crushes his
something.
head. Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, this Kingpin means business, and it threw me off, especially as like someone that has like went back and read the Stan Lee stuff. The big man was like a big reoccurring villain. Like the big man literally it was like a mystery on who is the big man, who is the leader of the enforcers. And then of course you find out that he worked for like the Daily Bugle. I forget the guy's name, but he was there, right? And the fact that they got done with the big man like so quick and they started with the Kingpin. I love that. Just the backstory and like the arcs they did with the villains. So good. I love what they did with Harry Osborn in this.
Yes.
That's a
yes.
good. That's a
Like,
good
oh.
place, long box, to jump off into. I guess like it's kind of hard to talk about. It is split into arcs, kind of, where he is going up against his villain, and that is the arc for the couple of issues. What are you guys' I guess feelings on the takes and the changes that were made to each of these villains? So you mentioned Kingpin in this is like super brutal. I mean, he's a crazy person in the regular 616, but he's crazier here too. And
Right.
so and then Vactor, you mentioned kind of Doc Ock and how he was a lead scientist or whatever at Oscorp. So I was just curious what everybody's thoughts are, like the changes to the characters, and maybe like which villain arc was like your favorite. Christian, let's hear it, dude. Which villain stuck out to you in this, or like the
was
changes
gonna
and
say-
stuff?
I want to talk about you said that it's hard, like there's arcs. I think the good thing is I don't remember the arcs because it just felt like one story.
Right.
I would never be like watching a movie and be like, well, remember those 20 minutes where we got. I like it flowing, and I like the fact that I can't be like, oh yeah, well, issues 7 through 12, or no, it just all melts together in my head, and
Yeah.
I like that.
Right.
Because
I
originally
like all the.
I was gonna say
Oh, no.
originally they were in paperbacks, so it was like, okay, 6 issues, 6 issues, 6
Gotcha, yeah.
issues.
Right.
Traditional.
And yeah, for you guys reading it as one, actually, I wanted to get your guys' thoughts because you guys get a lot of, especially Cody, you guys get a lot of physical collections. So for omnibuses, I have a love-hate relationship because it's like I love displaying them on my shelf and they look nice and hardcover, but then like, because I've done it with Saga and Invincible, when I start to read it and it's like, oh man, this is too thick for me to like. It's that part I don't like about it. I don't like that the physical book being so big that it's like it affects the way that I'm reading it.
It's like
And
unwieldy and like heavy
yeah,
and like
right.
yeah.
Right,
More
right.
than that, it's terrifying to read because you're like, I just paid $100.
Yes. Yeah.
You turn the pages like.
Right.
Right. That's like my wife. She doesn't she won't touch any of my omnis. I'm like, babe, you can like read you can read a story if you want to. But she's like, no, like they're expensive, you know. I'm like, I don't they're there to be read.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
you know.
That's how I feel about shoes too. It's like, man, you got these great sneakers, but you don't want to wear them because you don't want to crease them. And it's like, yeah, look at
Yeah.
Oh, he messed
look
up
at this
already.
guy.
He broke
didn't
it.
take the dust jacket off.
No.
got-
I was putting it in the shelf and it's like right. I just hit it too high, like an inch too high. And I
Make
was
sure you
like,
stretch that spine.
Gotta stretch the spine, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
no, but what I was gonna say, like all the villains are great. You know, I like what they did with Green Goblin, terrifying. The only one I didn't really like is Venom. Don't know
Yeah.
what it was. At least from
I
what
can
we've seen
understand that.
in Omni #1. Maybe in Omni #2 he fantastic. Just the first one, it was just too rushed. It was just like our parents worked on this, now I will become a monster.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and then just to your point, Christian, I think that to me that was my I guess like least favorite part of the Omni, and it kind of sucks because that is at the end of Omni #1. But yeah,
Right.
the Venom arc. I mean, they like see like he
I
sees
think-
Venom like
I'll
one
explain it
time
like
in the
this.
playground, and then like after that, after the rain, there's no more Venom after that.
I think for me
From
it's
Omni.
this
Yeah.
way. We all the villains in this Omni, which we get, I'm trying to remember how many villains we get. It's never just like, oh, this is the Green Goblin arc. It's like you'll get the Green Goblin and for 3 issues or 5 issues
Yeah.
disappears and then he'll come back. Same with Doc Ock. It's like, hey, here's Doc Ock, disappears, comes back. But Venom is the first one that you're just like,
Right.
you go.
It did feel a little rushed. Now when you think about it, it did feel rushed. I don't know if y'all have ever watched the Spectacular Spider-Man
Yes.
animated series.
Yes.
So, like I said, I didn't read this fully until like way after. And like when I got to the Venom stuff and the fact that they made Peter and Eddie connected, that they were childhood friends and all this, I was like, wait, that's from Spectacular Spider-Man. I was like, that's where they got that from.
Right.
Okay.
This book is so influential. Like instead of the spider being radioactive, it's like a genetically altered
Genetically
Spider-Man.
altered, yes.
That's what the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man took that. And like there's so many things that they updated and modernized it. Even the Ultimate Goblin, which that's my favorite villain, is the way that they changed from, hey, he's a guy in a Halloween mask and he throws pumpkin bombs, to this guy is the Hulk and he's shooting fire out of his hands and he's killing his wife, like killing everybody. Like that's the
That's what
Goblin.
Yep.
That's what they did for Into the Spider-Verse,
Man.
right?
Yes.
So when you saw that, when I was watching Into the Spider-Verse, I was like, that's the Ultimate Goblin. So I was going crazy when I was watching it. But yeah, it's so influential. There's so much stuff, so many ideas come out of this because it's the modernized version of it.
Well, all
And
the changes, like they just seem like no brainers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they really
Right.
just seem like they've always been
Right.
like in the background of the regular lore. You know what I mean? Kind of. Like,
Yeah.
It just
Right.
like
True.
it makes so much sense that they would be connected. That they're friends in high school or childhood friends or whatever.
Right.
You know what I wanted to say before we move ahead. Reading this book, we were talking about the dialogue being dated. I thought it was less dated than because I rewatched the Spider-Man one, the Tobey Maguire one. The dialogue in the book felt less dated than that. I keep thinking, and I'm sorry, this is like the cheesiest line in the movie when he says, "It's you who's out, Gavi, out of your mind."
yeah.
Right.
I think that was more trying to be like the 60s Spider-Man. Whenever he makes jokes, which that's one of the things I don't really like about the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, is anytime he tries to be funny, it's like, that sounds corny. That sounds like it's from the 60s. The only one.
He sounds like he was raised by grandparents.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which that's another change in this book.
Yeah,
Aunt May and Uncle Ben are like cool older people.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
they're hippies.
Uncle
They got
Ben rocking a
ponytails. Yeah.
ponytail.
Right. And that's where kind of the I was gonna say Tobey Maguire, the the Tom Holland Spider-Man, where the younger Aunt May,
Cool, yeah.
like that idea I think comes from Ultimate Spider-Man. So there's like a ton of stuff that gets taken and used in whether it's animated movies, video games, whatever it is. And speaking of,
Mhm.
the Ultimate Spider-Man video game that's one of my favorite superhero video games of all time. You actually play as Venom in that, and it's like a half of it's Peter Parker, half of it's Venom. And I think it was coming out around the time that the Venom arc in the comics was coming out. I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm kind of foggy on that. But if you want more Venom, play that Ultimate Spider-Man game.
I've seen gameplay of it, but I haven't played it myself. But it looks interesting.
It's hard to
Yeah, I've never played it myself.
Yeah, it's hard to play now. Like you look back on it, like you have rose-colored glasses. Oh yeah, this is great. The graphics are great. When I think about it, and then you play it today, I'm like, ugh, how did I ever play that? They need to up-res that. Or they need to remaster that because that was a great game when it came out.
You know,
'Cause they had-
speaking of villains.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Oh, I was gonna say real quick. It had like cell shaded, so it looked
Yep.
like a comic book. So it looked like an animated video game, and that was rare at that time.
Man, because there was a animated Spider-Man that had like shell shading from like that. I remember it
Yes,
came
yes.
on like
So, yes, that was
oh,
the
man, what was
MTV
that?
2000 Spider-Man, and Neil Patrick Harris was Peter Parker Spider-Man. That was actually a really good show. I think it only lasted like one or two seasons, and then it got canceled. It ends on a cliffhanger, and you're like, okay, I'm never gonna get to see what happens. But it's actually a really good show if you go back and watch it. But that's another one that it's kind of dated now because at the time it was like, oh, this is cutting edge CG
Yeah.
and like you
around
said,
that
cell
early
shaded.
2000s, stuff kind of looks a little off.
Yeah, it's
True,
not
true.
like detailed and the movements are kind of boxy. So yeah, it hasn't aged very well. But the show, like the storyline of it, is really good.
I'm gonna have to check it out because I've
Yeah.
always seen. I just remember when I was a kid and I saw like the electro from it, and it
Oh
scared
yes,
the
yes.
bejeebies out of me, and I was like, dude, I said bejeebies because I'm channeling my inner Peter Parker, so you know. But anyway,
Yeah.
like I wanted to say, one thing I really liked about a change to a villain that I thought was just genius is what they did with Kraven by having him like have a TV show.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that.
Yep.
Because it gave me like what was his name? Steve
Oh, Irwin.
Steve Irwin. Yes.
Crocodile
It
Hunter.
gave me those type of vibes. And I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
And then he's just
100%.
gets taken out like immediately, right? I think he gets like pushed against like, a news
Yes.
truck
Yeah.
and he just like passes out. That was the fight with Doc Ock too. That was a great fight.
Mhm.
And sometimes Bendis
yes.
would do that where he would play with your expectations because it's like, oh, I know Kraven from the 616, so he's gonna be like this big guy in Ultimate, and he'd be like, no, he was just a throwaway. He did that a couple times with a few people. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I just remember being like, oh, you're playing with my expectations of what I know from 616.
I think
The
he's
Shocker
able-
was pretty throwaway
the
as well.
Shocker. That's a good one. Yeah. Just like he's able to do that because the villains that he's been establishing, and like Christian's saying, right, he's dropping like hints throughout the whole thing. Like they feel fully realized. They're not like a one issue, like you said Vactor earlier, right?
Mhm.
Like they're not, just a one issue villain that, you'll see maybe, 40 issues down the line when they need to
Right.
pull someone back.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just like they feel like they live in this world. I'm just like flipping through here, and this art is just
Yeah, man, and this was like, not only was this like peak Mark Bagley to me, but this was peak Bendis. It's hard now,
Mhm.
like in 2023, both of these guys are still working, but they're not at the level they were at when this was coming out. It was like you could not touch these guys. These guys were like 93 Jordan. Like this was, you could not stop Bendis and Bagley, and Bendis would go on to do like Daredevil and do a fantastic job. Alias, like there was so many great things he was doing. He was just doing hit after hit after hit, and now after going to DC, it's like, man, when's the last time Bendis really had a hit, like a book that, like for you guys, like when you guys started reading comics, I think Bendis had only been mentioned of, oh, he was good in the past. Like he did a lot of good stuff in the past.
I mean,
but
coming into the hobby right now, that's kind of like the vibe, right? Like everyone's, not
Right.
so hot on Bendis nowadays. And listen, I get it because I was reading, he was on Justice League,
yes,
and that was like, I mean, biggest. I don't want to make it too negative, but I gotta say it's like the biggest waste of money is the entire like Bendis Justice League line, because they're so hard to get through, and they're not even consequential to the DC universe. So it's like, man, these are $5 an issue.
yeah, that's rough.
But that's definitely the vibe nowadays. Is it's like the cool thing to hate on Bendis, but I mean, listen, if he wrote Ultimate Spider-Man, you gotta check it out. You know what I mean? Whatever he's on, you gotta check it out.
We're not hating on him. We're just telling him that he can do better.
Right.
We
was
believe
on
in you,
bed.
Brian.
He
Yeah.
I
was
will
bad,
say
for
about
real.
the art, it did take me, and mainly because I've been reading more modern comics, it did take me a minute to get used to the art. It wasn't something that immediately caught my eye, but once it started progressing, I was like, oh, okay, this is now how I will look at every comic book.
You know
In
what's
the
crazy?
beginning-
Speaking of the art, I love Mark Bagley's Spider-Man so much because this was my first Spider-Man comic, right? That I saw a TikTok video where someone was saying that they didn't like Mark Bagley's art, and I blocked them.
That's a smart thing
I was
to
like,
do.
I don't want this negativity in my life.
Well, because whatever else they have to say is probably not worth it.
And
I
for
was like,
me,
nope.
not that I've read a lot of Spider-Man books, and maybe I'm going for like the most like classic ones, but I have seen a lot of like the signs for Spider-Man. I want to say that my favorites are of course Ultimate, and then I would put like Spider-Man Blue. I think
yes.
that worked really well, just how
Yes.
simple it was.
Mm.
And also Life Story. Not all
Yes.
of Life Story because then it gets too like futuristic, but Life Story was also like they hit the nail on the head with like just making it simple. It's not about the suit, it's just about his story. But I think the Ultimate Spider-Man really hit it out of the park with just it feels like a kid. This is a child in a suit. This is not a man.
Yeah,
And that was, yeah.
I was
go
just
ahead,
gonna say it's like totally like what you're saying, Christian. When he's like arguing, he's like acting out against like Aunt May and Uncle Ben. Like he feels, he thinks he's way more mature than he actually is, and that's how we were
I
at
was
that time,
thinking
right?
I
You
was
know what I mean?
thinking
It's
like go to your room, kid. Get out.
Yeah, I was on Uncle Ben's side on that one. But no, I think you're totally right, Christian. Like he feels like even though he's a smart kid, right? Because we've seen what he's able to do with science and technology. He's a web designer or whatever. But yeah, he does have these moments where he's in a pretty rough spot. And I think
I like
that goes
how
back
much
to
he
Long
loses.
Box when he's saying, just the like the core of who Spider-Man is. I really got that through this. So yeah.
I love how much he loses throughout this book.
Yes.
I don't think I saw a
Yes.
single like if I saw 2 wins from on his side, too much. You just show up and be like, okay, I think I know how to do this. I'm pretty strong. I beat up Flash, and then he just walks in and gets punched once, and it's lights out. I like that. I like the progression. I like
He gets-
seeing him make mistakes.
Yeah, and that's also going back to the Stan Lee original Spider-Man. Like he got defeated by Doc Ock when he first went up against him, and it was like he got easily defeated. Same thing with Kingpin in this Ultimate Spider-Man. It's like he gets his mask taken off, he just gets tossed aside. And you're right. If it's boring if the hero just wins all the time and there's no conflict or drama in it. So Spider-Man and Daredevil's the same way. It's like something has to be going wrong in his life for you to be enjoying it. It feels kind of weird, like you're enjoying it, but he's losing all the time, and you're like, I like this, but I kind of feel bad for the guy. But
Makes him
yeah,
super
Peter.
relatable. Yeah.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
do want to
that-
say, it shows how much of a kid he is. He's so cavalier about his identity. He's just like, oh, this will get me girls. Yeah, Spider-Man right here. He'll take off his mask, and he's not like, oh, what's gonna happen? He's just like, gotta make a new mask. And I like that. Like, it tells me that when I get the second Omni and the third, I don't know how many there are, it'll be a thing. Like, oh, we know who he is. So now we can kill his whole family.
Oh yeah.
You know, I'm such a fan of this series. I've already like mapped it out how many omnis this is probably gonna take. Like, I'm expecting 5.
It's like 4
expecting
plus, right?
5.
Like 4 minimum. Like
Yeah.
4 minimum, or else these things are gonna
4
be,
minimum.
these things are gonna be
Because
chunky.
Yeah. That sounds about
Man.
right. And what's crazy is in our, in real life, this series is about 11 years. And in the comic, it's like a year passes. So he's like 15 at the start and he's like 16 at the end of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Man.
You know what? Maybe once we finish this call, I'll get the second Omni.
Ooh.
Like right after.
If it's available, I'll do it right now for you guys. Because I'm
It's
just
a-
getting
it's
more and more
available.
excited.
It's
So,
a
I
fantastic.
will
You gotta
send you
follow
the
me.
link.
Cody, you gotta follow me into the dark.
I already
on, man.
bought it, dude. It's in my closet in a box. It's already in a box, bro. I have to film an unboxing for it. Okay, so
Hey
something.
guys, keep an eye out. He's gonna film an unboxing.
No, okay. There's literally 8 boxes in my. Some of them have like 2 omnis or 2 deluxe editions or whatever. I gotta sort this out. All right. I'm like,
Oh, Cody, are you rich? Every time I turn around, you got 10 new boxes of 100 comics. I don't know how you're doing it.
well, so I save them in chunks. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. So like when I did my Christmas like video series, like I had so many that I was able to map out like 12 days of unboxings because I have so many. Anyways, it's a whole problem, right? But one thing I wanted to mention.
It's an
before we-
addiction.
It's an addiction. I mean, look at Longbox. He did that, but
Oh,
just
yeah.
like 4 years
Oh,
ago.
yeah. Yeah.
Something I want to mention before we call it quits here is I really loved him and MJ, and I say this because it isn't something that I've personally, since I've got into like modern day Spider-Man. It's, I mean, Longbox, you know how it is. I'm sure Vactor, you know how it is. Christian's like, they aren't allowed to be just happy together. But it was so cool seeing like the blossoming of this relationship, of course in the modern setting, the modern time or whatever, but just seeing them, go through like, regular high school relationship stuff. I thought it was awesome the way.
I don't think I had ever seen them be happy even for a slight second before this. Because going to the Spider-Man books I've read, Life Story, has everyone read it here?
Yes.
You read it, Cody? Longbox? We all good with
Yes, I
spoilers?
read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. They're like divorced for like 80% of it.
Yeah.
Spider-Man Blue, she shows up in like 5 pages.
And it's like, I know that they're having their issues here, but it is cool seeing like the start of that relationship. So Christian, to your point, dude. So like this page right here, I don't know if anybody can see it, but it's just like, it's literally just like 9 panels of like their eyes, right? And like you're reading that and you feel like you're watching this relationship like grow and stuff. And I thought it was so awesome because if you're reading modern day, like they're either like not together, right? Or like they were together in Beyond, but it kind of felt weird like in that whole storyline. And then I mean the current Wells Spider-Man run, they're not even together anymore, right?
Yeah.
So what happened?
He's with
right?
Felicia right now. Yeah.
So it's like it was just so cool seeing like the opposite of that, where they are starting this relationship. And
to its credit, when you talk about them having issues in this, they're kids.
Yes.
They don't know how to handle a relationship.
Exactly.
This is probably their first relationship. And that makes sense. I wasn't like, oh my god, they're gonna break up. I was like, they're children. They'll make mistakes, but they'll get back together at some point.
And then
and you know,
no, you go for it, Longbox.
I'll just go. But yeah, like one thing, I don't know if y'all ever seen like my TikTok videos where I've covered like Mary Jane and all this stuff, because I'm an avid Mary Jane fan. I've always said like when Mary Jane is written correctly, you get some really good
It's
stories,
just so interesting here. You know what I mean? Like,
and it's so good. It's so good here, and I feel like, and I've always said this: Ultimate Comics Mary Jane is literally how Emma Stone played Gwen Stacy in the Andrew Garfield
I've
films.
heard that your theory on that. I think it's so spot on. Like having read it now, I think it's really spot on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
and
I've always
it's
said that.
I'm kind of sad for you guys right now because he was like, there's so much history with him and Mary Jane that if you're coming into comics right now, they just kind of expect you to know that already and have that in the back of
Right.
your mind. But then also, they want to distance themselves from the Mary Jane relationship. Like Marvel needs to decide what they want to do with that because when they had the whole brand new day, one more day, when Mephisto just erased their marriage, it was they were trying to get back to, oh yeah, it's more fun when he's single because the storytelling options and blah blah blah. But you had a generation of people that grew up on him and Mary Jane together, and even
Mm-hmm.
the people who were seeing the Tobey Maguire movies, it was like, oh, MJ is his Lois Lane. That's who he's supposed to be with. But then you had the people from the '60s that grew up, and they were like, oh wait, Gwen Stacy was his original love interest, and so you had this whole history with Spider-Man and women, and then now it's like I don't know what is going on. Like I don't associate him with anybody now. When I'm reading the new Amazing Spider-Man that just came out
Mm-hmm.
last week or 2 weeks ago, and it's like, all right, he's flirting with Felicia, and they have this like chemistry that's good, but at the same time, I don't see him with her. I don't see him marrying Felicia or having a kid with Felicia. So it's just kind of a weird situation. And like Cody said, they still haven't told us what the mystery is of why did he break up with MJ and why is she with another guy. And so I kind of feel bad for you guys
Yeah.
because it has not been good for Spider-Man and Mary Jane for a long time. I'm talking about years.
Yeah. True
But
that.
this
I
is
think the
perfect.
last, because actually I've been recently reading the Amazing Spider-Man by J. Michael Straczynski
Oh, okay.
omnibus,
Yes.
and that actually that omni, it starts off with them, they're like separated, but they're still married.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But the whole run is them like coming back together and they're rekindling their love, and you just okay, like me as like a married person, and I'm just seeing this, and I always tell my wife like she made me soft because I get giddy over stuff like this, and I just miss that from Peter Parker and Mary Jane, and Ultimate just gives me that.
And it's like, not to get too in the weeds, because this is a great conversation about it. But I mean, we can go on and on, right? But people always say like, just let Peter and Mary J be together, and if you want to have like the younger person who's going through relationship stuff, like you have a whole closet full of Spider-Man characters that you can do that with, right?
Well,
how come it's
Miles
not
is the
Miles?
perfect
Oh yeah,
one.
100%.
Exactly. Like they just put Miles. I'm not keeping up with his current series, but
Oh, it's
he's
good.
still in high
That's good.
school, right? Like they put him
Yes.
back in high
Yes.
school.
Yeah.
Like, that's awesome, dude.
Mm-hmm.
They just held him back. He was going to college, and they're like,
Come on, man. All right, I don't know. So we've been going for about 50 minutes, so it's a little longer than I originally intended. But I mean, does anyone have any? I'm sure we'll be coming back to this. Maybe like an Ultimate Spider-Man like volume number 2 thing. Maybe get some more other people on as well, and just have like a big roundtable discussion. But does anyone have any thoughts before we conclude this episode? Any final, I guess, like thoughts on volume number 1? Go for it, Christian.
it's so good that I'm buying the second one right now.
Love that. Dude.
Yeah.
I love that.
I
Which
I
cover
have
did you get?
issue number 50. It's the 50th issue cover. It's an organic prize book. It's like you'll open it right now. It's the only one
I got
available.
you. I was wondering if it was I think there's one with like a Carnage on it, and then one with like the whole Sinister Six.
It's just him.
I got the
swinging.
one with
Gotcha.
I got the one with Carnage.
Yeah, that's the one I
on
got
it.
too. I'm realizing now. I
It's
guess I
just
probably
Peter
should have got the one
swinging.
with Venom, so they pair well. But
Mm.
anyway.
That's why I got it. That's why I got it.
Anyways, Longbox, you got any final words, dude?
For any of like our watchers or listeners, man, just read Ultimate Spider-Man. It is the best thing to come out of the Ultimate Universe, hands down.
I don't think anyone's gonna disagree with you there. From what I've heard, I haven't read any of the other stuff, but I think that's safe to say.
Ultimate X-Men is pretty good, but Spider-Man is tops, and that's where you get Miles from. He comes from Ultimate Spider-Man. So, yeah, I gotta say, if you guys like this set of issues, these 39 issues, you're gonna love the rest of them. Like the thing about Ultimate Spider-Man is it never dips in quality. Like it just continues to stay at a high level, and having the same creative team the entire, not the entire, like I said, not the entire way, but 90% of the run, it just like there's something about that just makes it solid. So I'm very happy to hear you guys enjoying it, and you are gonna, like I said, you're gonna love the rest of it. Wait till you see how they do Carnage in there.
Nice. All right, I like the suspense here. I love it. Vactor, where can people find you? And
you can actually check me out on YouTube. If you just search my name, Vactor, I have a channel called The Vactorverse where I do a podcast, and I also do another podcast with my dad where he's telling stories from his life for my son. So it's kind of a generational podcast. So check all that out at youtube.com/Vactor.
Nice. You can find it down below.
Cool.
Longbox, where can people find you?
Longbox_entertainment on TikTok and Instagram. Hopefully, I've actually been started planning. I want to start a YouTube, so be on the lookout for that probably later on this year. So yeah,
nice.
More exciting things to come.
Awesome. Christian, you got where can people find you? And you got anything to plug? Any projects?
You can find me at my house, at my job if you go at the correct hours.
Yep.
And you can find me. I do this podcast with this guy who I like to pretend is really annoying, but in reality is a very good friend. I'm giving you a compliment. Color Break, and TikTok, but that'll be in the description. And I'm here every 2 weeks, so.
Yep. If you're here, you already probably know about Christian. All right. Thank you guys for joining us for this. We're gonna call it a Color Break one shot. I think I said that already. Be sure to be, there's gonna be more of these every now and then, maybe like once a month or something like that. Thank you guys for joining us. Find all these lovely gentlemen's links down in the description. I'll see you guys later.